What's up, my dudes? TommieBAcademy here. Now, when it comes to your stance, there's so many different applications, different ways you stand on your snowboard to make you better at certain things on a snowboard, and there's so many different opinions when it comes to stance. So this video is going to be filled with my experience, my opinion. But if you think I'm wrong, you think I'm right, I want you guys to comment down below, and let's help each other out, figure out how we really dial in the most awesome stance. First thing first, when it comes to your guys' stance, you gotta figure out what is the application. If you're trying to ride a bunch of switch riding or you're riding park and you want to be able to go left and right equally as awesome, you may want to consider making your stance duck as well as symmetrical to make it even. Now let's just say you're trying to rip up some carves. Well, you may want to have a little bit more of a directional stance. So first, you got to identify what your stance is. So the benefits of a wide stance is that you have a more stable platform. That's awesome. Sometimes if you're going too wide, you actually impede your ability to rotate. So if you're trying to spin a bunch on jumps, it actually may make it harder because your stance is way too wide. In addition to that, if your knees are so wide and your knees actually fold in, it can create knee problems because your knees, instead of flexing in a biomechanically awesome position, it may be in a compromised position. So consider performance as well as comfort. In addition to that, if your stance is super narrow, you have less balance, but you have more maneuverability. You can spin your board really fast, and a lot of rail riders love to spin fast on rails, but they may struggle a little bit when they're hitting a huge jump because it's not as much of a platform to land and absorb that terrain. So consider those things when you're designing or creating or finding your stance. So when it comes to my personal snowboard stance, I ride a 21.5 inch wide stance, and my binding angles are 15 degrees on the front foot and -15 on the back foot. I personally like that because it allows me to be as symmetrical as possible so I can ride regular and goofy theoretically the same. Obviously there is some inconsistencies with that because I'm riding regular right now. I may have more dominant muscles on one side of my body versus the other, but theoretically my stance is going to be symmetrical. Now, in addition to that, I chose 21.5 inches for two reasons. Most snowboards that I ride is a 149 to 151, and with that stance, I am referenced, which means it's like the recommended stance in the center. So then I'm able to ride a true twin board. I'm able to be in the center of the board. Also, with the 21.5 inch stance, my knees are able to track over my toes. They don't bend in, they don't fold out, they actually track over the toes in a optimal or biomechanically more awesome position. Now, if I'm hitting drops to flat, I'm hitting side hits, I'm hitting jumps, whatever it is, I want my knees to be able to optimally absorb that impact so I don't break my knees off, right? I'm not trying to hurt my knees at all. So that's one consideration I have for my stance, is the longevity of my snowboarding, the performance of handling what I'm being able to do. Now with that stance, as I said, I'm being able to ride regular switch. That means I can go ride POW regular and switch. I also can go hit jumps, I can go hit rails. It is a very versatile stance. It's kind of just in the middle. It's not a directional stance. If it was directional, it would be way more awesome at carving, but then you might sacrifice something on the back end. So again, I like to be symmetrical. All right guys, so you just heard me talking a whole bunch about my particular stance and what I like to do. Now, I am here at Breckenridge with a couple of the boys. We got Easy and Nick here. This stuff is gonna be linked in the description below. One of the ways to know if your stance is awesome or not is first, do your knees hurt? Does it feel like they're creating so much more pain than they need to? Well, what I used to do is I had my stance angle at 12, positive 12, negative 12, and it just felt uncomfortable. It felt like my knees just hurt. So then I switched to 15-15, and all of a sudden my knees just felt like they were in a better position and they didn't hurt. So if your knees hurt, switch up your stance a little bit. Try a little wider, try a little narrow, try to change your angles and figure out what doesn't hurt. And remember, we're not trying to compromise performance only for comfort or comfort only performance. It has got to be a blend.
So the only way to find out if a different stance might feel better is try it. Don't ride with the same stance year over year over year thinking like, yeah, this works. Try a couple variations, because then you might find out, yeah, I'm gonna go back to the way it was, or you might find out, wow, that's a lot more comfortable. That gives me more pop, etc. You know, go with the flow and try a couple different things out before you make that final decision on what stance is best for you.
Boom! It also gives you the opportunity to compare. What did I like about this stance? What are the benefits? What did I not like? Now that you have a couple different reference points, then you can make a nice decision for yourself of like, okay, what feels good and what performance do I get out of it? A couple tasks that you guys can do is simple carving, ollies, some nice skidded turns on various terrain, steep terrain versus mellow terrain. Which stance makes it easier? Then you can, and then go back and ride that same run so you can compare it, and feel what feels better. So something that we haven't talked about is simply our equipment. So I got my boy Nick out here and he's got some sick advice for you.
So another tip is that your stance will change based on the equipment that you're riding. My snowboards are very different from each other and I will set my stances differently. Also, bindings and boots have different features. So a new pair of bindings may not feel the same as your old bindings, so you might have to set them up slightly differently.
Now, with my perspective on changing equipment, I try not to change equipment. I like to ride the same exact bindings, the same exact boots year after year. I may change boards a little bit, but ideally I'm getting the same size, same camber profile. A lot of things are consistent. For me, I want to perform at a certain level, and if I change two or many variables, does that make me not be able to perform the way or ride the way I want? So I try to stay as similar as possible, but if you have a PAL board, you might want to switch it. If you're gonna go only car for the day, switch it up. But that's gonna be back to personal preference. Now, I wanna go snowboard! Woo! What's up, guys? So I'm gonna interrupt this video real quick and let you know that there is going to be a part 2 of this video that's gonna get a little bit more nerdy about how you specifically are gonna find your stance, what is the perfect stance for you. This video is more about the discussion of my stance / the experience, plus trying to figure out how to dial in your stance and experiment with it, but there will be a part 2. In addition, I do live streams every single Tuesday, so if you got a question about this video or a question about stance in general or other nerdy subjects, topics about snowboarding, join me Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and we can talk about all this fun stuff and live chat. It's a good time. We are in my studio, so it gets a little nerdy out here. Big shout out to Easy and big shout out to Nick. These boys are really helping out. My goal is just to make as much content for you guys that is gonna help you just be a better snowboarder, have more fun, and stay in the industry. That is my goal. So thank you so much for watching. If you guys are digging the content, definitely consider subscribing because I'm gonna be putting content out all the time. Also give it a thumbs up. And the last thing I want from you guys is let me know what you think of the video. Comment down below. Agree, disagree, like, hate. Let me know. And we get this conversation started. All right, guys. Nothing but love, my dudes. We out.